when I went in for the last one, just a week before the due date, there was no heartbeat.
Right.
Well, we did, and that was the thing. In not talking to anyone, I had the assumption that it would be deemed the same as having a miscarriage.
As churches are declining in the Western world, I believe that life starts at conception, and that we should protect it at that point. I believe Jesus, when he came on earth, he didn't come to condemn; he came to save. Believe in protecting the rights of the unborn, as if they're just as you had a 12-week baby that died.
Mm-hmm.
We've both held the babies, and so would you agree then that I would be a hate group, or what do you think I'm missing? Or I want to just have an opportunity to let you challenge me on my thinking, or what you think maybe I'm missing. Or
I would not label hate.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. What you're about to listen to is a conversation I had with Madeleine from Big Brothers Big Sisters. And so I just wanted to say something up front before you listen to this, is that the first section of the podcast is us just talking about her story and all the different ways she's worked in nonprofit for the last 30 plus years. And we talk about grief a lot because she lost a child. And we talk about share about my story on that as well. And then she worked with an organization that dealt with mourning families. And then the last half of the podcast, which is around the 100-minute and hour and 20-minute mark. You can see the exact timestamp in the notes below. We have a debate about ethics, Christian ethics, abortion, marriage, all those different things, gay rights, LGBTQ issues. And so I know some of you are just more interested in that, and it's a 2-hour podcast, so you might want to skip just to that if that's all you're into. So I just wanted to say that up front so that doesn't get missed. And hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Furiously Curious Show. I'm here with Madeleine Buhlau from Big Brothers Big Sisters, the executive director of the local chapter here in Abbotsford, which covers Chilliwack, Hope, and also into Maple Ridge.
So it's all of Fraser Valley. So from the west of Maple Ridge, Mission, Abbotsford, and then Chilliwack all the way to Boston Bar, actually.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. So I got in touch with you because Candace, who works for you at Big Brothers Big Sisters, was at a golf tournament. And my brother-in-law, I think like 20 years ago already, was doing Big Brothers Big Sisters and had someone. And I was like, oh, I love what the organization does. And so I got in touch with you, or she put me in touch with you, and did some coaching with some of your staff. And I just love Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I thought it'd be interesting to have you on the podcast and get to know your story a little bit more. I know we've talked a bunch at coffee a few times. But hopefully shed some light on Big Brothers Big Sisters, learn a little bit more about nonprofit, talk about Christian ethics. So, how'd you get into the world of nonprofit work?
I don't know that there was any specific moment. Growing up as a teen, was always babysitting. I was the babysitter in our neighborhood, and I loved working with kids. So I knew that moving forward, that would be most likely what I do. And when I was a teen, I did do some work with special needs children and adults through an institution that we had in Oakville. And I loved doing that work. So I ended up combining the two, and I went to school to get my early childhood education, and went the road of specialty in working with youth and children with special needs.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you right away went into nonprofit work right after that then, or?
So, yeah, I worked first for a community organization that was just a community daycare. And then after that, I went into working for a segregated institution for special needs children in the community. And it was just after I joined them that the government came forward and had made a decision that they wanted to integrate children into our school system and into regular daycare settings.
Okay, so special needs kids before that time were not. They were in their own schools?
They were segregated.
Okay, what year was that?
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, we're going back to like 19. Boy, I've aged. 19, around 87, 88.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And was that a good decision, you believe?
I think it was a great decision.
Okay.
The problem at the time, though, is that even though the decision was made, there wasn't a lot of supports put in place. So for our team, we were having to go into the schools, educate teachers, because most of them who went to school to become teachers didn't have any education about special needs children. So it was educating them. It was prepping the families whose kids were going to move into the school system. They were nervous.
Was special needs fall under like physical special needs too, or just mental health?
It would be both.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be both.
Okay.
So we spent a lot of time. The first few years were all about educating the childcare centers, because we started with children preschool.
Yeah.
Up through the school age. So we were doing a lot of education with childcare centers, with teachers within the school system, supporting the parents, and trying to make it as fluid a transition for the families and kids as we possibly could.
And this was a nonprofit organization that did this work, or was it?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it was a community organization, not necessarily nonprofit.
Okay.
So I got into the nonprofit world after doing that work.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges that came up when you did the integration into the schools?
I think the teachers were nervous. So a lot of education there, because they hadn't worked with special needs children before. So when we talk about special needs, as you said, some of the kids, it was physical challenges. Others, it was a combination of mental and physical. So for them, they were concerned about the equipment. They were concerned about disruption to classrooms. They were concerned about the additional support that was going to be provided by teachers' aides and volunteers. So a lot of dialogue had to be had, and we ran a lot of educational community sessions to try and get over those humps of people's nervousness.
Yeah.
And for families, I mean, for them, they just wanted to know that their kids were going to be well cared for,
Okay.
that there weren't going to be issues of safety and security for them, and that they were going to be accepted.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of conversation over a number of years had to happen.
It's kind of surprising that they actually weren't integrated earlier than that. Like, I can imagine someone that might be mentally, on par with everyone else, but physically is now in a separate school.
Mm-hmm. I think there were children that were integrated who had, I would say, very mild disabilities. So if somebody was just mentally delayed, we had kids that maybe academically would have had a hard time keeping up, and they would have been kept back. But for our organization, for us to accept them, they would have had to have delays of 6 months or more in 3 different areas.
Oh, okay.
So there was definitely that difference.
Yeah. Okay, so you did that work, and then what came next?
Yeah, so I did that work until I found that my caseload was getting too heavy. When I went into that work, it was about working one-on-one with the kids, being able to have that time spent with them and set their goals and work towards meeting those goals with them. By the time I left, I had over 20 kids on my plate in my caseload, and it was too much. I was just basically doing all the administrative work, creating their plans, but I didn't actually have the time to be implementing them and spending time with those kids. And that's not what I went into the work for. So I made a decision for myself that it was time for me to leave and go on to something else. And so after I left that, I started a family play center in the community. I had my daughter at the time. She had a special need of her own, and I wanted to do something still giving back to community, but where my daughter could be with me. And we had concerns about her being in a childcare center at the time because her disability was her heart
Okay.
and her immune system was affected.
Yeah.
So I ran a childcare center, play center for 5 years, and that was great. It just kind of met all the needs that I had to meet at the time of raising her in her early years. So that
So it's
was
like a
fabulous.
daycare in your home, that sort of idea?
No, it was an actual 3,000 square foot play facility
Oh, wow.
where people could have birthday parties for their kids, or they could come in and pay a small fee to spend a number of hours having coffee and their kids meeting for play dates. And
Like a
we
play
had-
abbey sort of thing.
yeah, we had a huge ball pit and climbing apparatus, and we had party rooms and all those things.
So it's like a business to a certain degree.
It was a business.
Oh, yeah.
It was a business.
Okay.
And met all my needs at the time. I ran it with a
Cool.
girlfriend of mine. We opened at a time when there was only a handful of them.
Okay. Was that a big business investment? Like to come up with capital and go from a nonprofit thing to like running a business? And that's a lot of change.
We did have to have some capital, but we were very lucky because there was someone who had opened that play center a year before, and unfortunately it didn't take.
Okay.
And so we were able to move into this existing business without having to do a huge investment. So not to say we didn't have to invest, but it wouldn't have been, it was not nearly what we would have expected to do if we were doing something from scratch.
Okay.
So that worked out really well for us. The business was only 5 minutes away from my home. My daughter could be at work with me. It ended up being just the perfect thing at the time to do.
Okay.
And because there weren't many around, the insurance companies didn't know what to do with us. And we found that the families were very, very interested in what we were doing. But we were lucky enough to be on breakfast television for 2 segments. We had a huge front page article in the business section of the Toronto Star.
Wow.
So because it was such a new thing, we were able to get a lot of publicity, and that really helped to make the business a success.
Okay.
Plus, with my early childhood education and being a parent and my partner being a parent, we knew what parents wanted and needed.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of the success for us. We knew what we had to do and how to set things up and what expectations of parents, what they had. So yeah, we moved forward with success and then sold it 5 years later.
Okay, cool.
After that, that's when I jumped into the not-for-profit sector.
Okay. And right away, was that intentional, or was that just opportunity?
It was an opportunity that came about. So at that time, with all the changes that were happening with kids being integrated into the system, the government also started what they referred to as the early years centers. And so basically the aim was to ensure that kids 0 to 6 were getting the best start in life. And so they provided an enormous amount of money that was dedicated to ensuring that. And organizations that existed in the community could apply to become an early years center. So at the time, I was hired by the region to oversee applications that were being brought forward from organizations about the applying to become one. And so I assisted for a number of years all those agencies that moved forward with that.
Okay, so you represent the government to approve these.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah, through the local region. When that was done and the agencies were chosen, I then actually applied to work for the local early years center. And that's where I started in the not-for-profit.
Okay.
So the Oakville Parent-Child Center at the time, because it was piloted, they were sort of grandfathered in and able to continue to do the work that they were doing for children up to the age of 12. but the emphasis being on the younger children, 0 to 6. And so they needed someone who could come in and sort of take over the work of the 6 to 12-year-olds, preparing parents for those preteen years and education of kids transitioning into their teen years. So I was responsible for doing a lot of the fundraising and marketing at that time. I took on the position of overseeing all their child care centers for a period of a year, and was developing all the program curriculum for the 6 to 12-year-olds.
Okay. So your character is naturally pushing towards more leadership roles and management. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long did that last for?
Well,
what years would that have been?
Yeah, so I was with the center for 5 years. And then I moved on to taking on a position with a local not-for-profit called Kerr Street Ministries. So it was also a Christian-based organization. And
Kerr Street?
Kerr Street Ministries.
Kerr. Okay. Kerr?
Yep.
Okay.
And so they hired me to take on their youth mentoring program. They were trying to develop that. And so my responsibility there was to basically look at the curriculum for that, develop the program, who would be involved, all the policies and procedures around what that program would look like.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was Kurt like? Was it like Salvation Army sort of thing, like shelter work, or was
not shelter work per se, but they were in the main floor of an apartment building, and that apartment building was for housing. So our executive director was helping to house individuals that were in need. They also did community meals, so they would help people with food and clothing. They held a community meal every weekend, and that was done by a variety of churches over the time. I'd say probably 80% of their funding came through the local churches. And then we had childcare, and they ran a summer camp. So they had a lot going on. It was a fairly large organization.
Okay.
And housed in an area. Kerr Street was known at the time of being a high needs area. And I think over the years, a lot of work was done to work towards assisting those that were in poverty and had addictions, or, were struggling with just general family issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of good work being done.
Interesting. I just started working as a casual at the homeless shelter, Salvation Army homeless shelter, just a couple shifts a week.
Yep.
And it's pretty interesting, and I enjoy it a lot. And it's interesting to start learning how what their goals are, of getting people off the streets, and the different systems they have. And not sure how I feel about all the systems they have yet, because I don't know a lot about it, and because it's hard to know what's enabling and what's actually helping, and there's lots of different opinions on that out there, but and I know it's shifted over the years as well. Because what year would that have been? Because I think after 2010 it shifted, kind of the approach the government took.
Yeah, it did. When I was there, I'm trying to count back the years now. I mean, it would have been in the probably mid-90s.
Okay.
Mid to late 90s that I was with them. Yeah, I should have brought my resume around. I could have kept the years tracked better.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Okay. So you did that for 5 years as well?
I was there for, I think, approximately 3 years. Okay. And the organization went through a really difficult time. And unfortunately, I wasn't comfortable with some of the decisions that were being made there. And I was asked to do, some things I wasn't comfortable in doing with regards to the funding and reporting and things. So,
like what? Can you share what kind of things, or?
Well, we had a lot of money coming in, and for the program that I was responsible for, I was asked to provide reports back to our funder that weren't true,
Okay.
and I wasn't comfortable with doing that. A lot of money was being shifted around and played with that wasn't aligning
Mm.
with the funding that we were receiving from our funders. And there's very, very strict policies around that because all those reports, are looked over by CRA. And in all of the work that I had done, you start to develop a relationship and a trust and a rapport with your funders. And I was uncomfortable in doing anything that was going to,
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there were a few of us at the agency that felt that a lot of ethical boundaries were being crossed. And so, and we had volunteers working for us on projects that weren't being cared for or managed in a way that should have been, with security and safety to the work that they were doing. So we went to the board, and we felt that we had to present to the board what was going on because there were serious safety concerns.
Yeah.
And so, so the board sort of circled their wagons for a while. And
As
then,
boards do.
As boards do, because they had to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
I think the director had made decisions that he felt were fine to do. And I think as a ministry, so many people in ministry do things abroad in third world countries. And of course, WorkSafe isn't in those countries. There's no policies and procedures that you have to really align yourself with.
Yeah.
So, but that's not the case here. And so the board circled their wagons, and then I started receiving calls from a few of the local funders wanting to know my side of things. So I had a conversation with the Community Foundation, and in the end, unfortunately, the ED was let go of. And that was unfortunate because I think he was a good guy, but I think there was, I'd say, an ego that just became a little too big, and I think the board wasn't doing their due diligence. And he was provided a great deal of leeway, and the oversight wasn't there to ensure that things were being done.
Yeah. Ethically.
Yeah, ethically. So I made a decision to leave, and the board, or I should say the funder that I had the conversations with, knew of another position and put my name forward. And so I had an interview with them, and that ended up being Bereaved Families of Ontario. And I went to work with them for 5 years.
Okay. Bereaved families?
Bereaved Families.
Bereaved Families of Ontario. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So it's an organization that helps people that have lost kids or family members, or?
Family members. So, well, any loss, really. The only type of loss we didn't deal with was pet loss. There was already an organization in dealing with that. But for us, yes, the loss of a spouse, a child.
And what was your role?
A family. So I was the executive director there.
Okay. And so were you dealing with families directly at all yourself, or was that more your team that was?
No, I was. I did do direct work with them, but we had multiple staff, and it's a organization that does peer-to-peer support. So we were responsible for training individuals who had themselves had a loss previously in their life and wanted to help others get through theirs. So we had a very intensive training program. There was, I believe our program at the time was anywhere between 36 to 40 hours that you had to go through. And then they would support groups based on the loss that they had. Oh. And we had a lot of...
Had you experienced loss yourself as well?
I had.
Okay.
The reason I went to Bereaved Families is my husband and I went through several losses in the early years of our marriage. The first one was the death of my father-in-law, and he had passed away 10 days before our wedding.
Oh, wow.
So we were dealing with a lot all at once, and it was unexpected. He had a massive heart attack. So after that, after getting married, my husband and I made a decision to start a family fairly early on. We had hoped to have a large family. And unfortunately, I had problems in the early stages of my pregnancy, and I had a miscarriage. And after giving ourselves some time to get through that, I got pregnant again, and I carried my son until a week before his due date. And I was having stress strips done in the last few months of my pregnancy. And when I went in for the last one, just a week before the due date, there was no heartbeat.
Oh.
And so I was sent home for a couple of days, coming back to the hospital every day. And so unfortunately had to give birth to to our son. And
What was his name?
There.
Fair. Okay.
There, yeah. And so that was a difficult thing to go through for many reasons. Number one, I think I was in such shock. I was asked to do things that I think I might, if I was in a clearer state of mind, might have done differently, because I just expected that they would do a cesarean, and the doctor said, it was probably best if I wanted to have natural childbirth later on, that I do this birth naturally as well. So after being told, I was sent home, and they insert you with a gel that helps you to bring on the labor. And so came back in the next day, assuming it would be done then, and it wasn't. I was sent home for another day, and thinking back on it years later, I thought, why did they not keep me in hospital? They were sending me home fully pregnant, knowing that
Baby was gone.
Yeah. And, psychologically, I think back to that time, and it was rather brutally unkind, I think,
Yeah.
for them to do that.
I'm not sure if we've discussed this before, but me and my wife had the exact same thing. So it was 2 or 3 days before Grace was due, and she the umbilical cord went around her neck, and so she died. And so they gave her just a pill, and then she gave birth. She sent us home,
Yeah.
and then she gave birth naturally the next day. But I can't imagine having be 4 or 5 days that you're carrying the baby, and then having to give birth.
Yeah, being sent home twice, and then even on the third day, they induced me with something to bring the baby forward, because my cervix still wasn't where they wanted to see it.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot. And back then they didn't have a lot of social workers working in the hospitals. So I wasn't seen by anybody from, a social worker, psychiatrist, psychologist.
What about family?
There was
how did family deal with that?
Well, my mom and father were out here in BC at the time. We were still in Ontario. And so, of course, as soon as my mom heard, she booked herself a flight and came out right away. And I don't know what I would have done without her being there.
Yeah.
But it was quite horrendous. And
did you guys have a funeral, or did you?
Well, we did. And that was the thing. In not talking to anyone, I had the assumption that it would be deemed the same as having a miscarriage. But once you get past a certain number of weeks, it is seen as, a viable child, and you are to go through naming your child and having a funeral and all those pieces. Again, nobody making you aware of what the next steps were going to be.
Okay, yeah.
And when Thayer was taken down to the mortuary, I wasn't even told that I could have an opportunity to go down and hold him and sit with him and do all those things. So there's so much that I feel that I lost out on.
Yeah, I see that.
Time that I could have had and spent with him. So the only thing that I was left with at the end of that was a photo that the nurse takes at the time of his birth.
So they took him away right away?
My mom, after he was born, my mom held him. I wasn't prepared to do that just yet. I was so emotional after having, I hadn't slept in 3 days.
Yeah.
I hadn't.
Yeah.
So I would have appreciated somebody letting me know that I could have done that once I was able to get myself into a clear mind of just having that clarity. So
I think we had it. She was born at 7 or 8 a.m. and then we had a bunch of people visit till lunchtime, and then we left the hospital after lunch, and we just left her in those clear beds that they have in hospital rooms. Just left her there and walked out, which was the most awful experience, to leave a little baby there and walk out. And
I know. Yeah, I have so many regrets, and I sit with a lot of guilt. Because he should have been held by his mother.
Yeah.
I should have had that opportunity to be with him. And so I felt...
How did your husband respond to it? I guess me and Nicole both responded very differently to it. I kind of shut down more and started drinking a lot. And we were just on different wavelengths. And I actually felt guilty that I was mourning at all, because I heard of someone earlier, like 10 years earlier, that had lost their baby in the same way. And I kind of, in my, adolescent brain, just thought it was like a miscarriage in a way, that it wasn't like you don't have a relationship with the baby, stuff like that. And so all of a sudden now I'm in a position and I feel huge grief, and so I felt guilty. So I kind of just closed off, because I was like, I don't know how to process this. Was there the difference between you two and how you dealt with it?
Very different. My husband, I think, similar to you. He just had to shut down, I think, in the sense of, trying to protect himself from all the grief, all the hurt. And over the years that built up, and he actually became ill from it. He ended up with an ulcer, a bleeding ulcer that he had to be medicated for. And because that's, I think, what happens to us. It embeds itself in our body, all that grief, and it turns into something ugly. Yeah. He too, for a period of time, was, drinking nightly, and he grew up with a father who was an alcoholic. So he and I had to sit down and really have a good chat about, the amount of drinking that he was doing, and that it wasn't going to be the way to deal with it. I am more open and more of a talker, and part of that is probably just from my personal education. He didn't grow up in a house where anything was talked about or discussed. He grew up at a time with a father who was, you have something to cry about, I'll give you, I'll give you something to cry about. Which wasn't uncommon for back in that day. And his father lost his dad in the war. He never came back from the war. And so he didn't have a male model to show him how to best deal with things. So we did deal with things very differently. I sought help, and I talked to my girlfriends, and But the help didn't come to me till a few years later. I thought I had been dealing with it all, but part of my way of dealing with it was to get back on the horse and try again. And so we did have our third pregnancy with our daughter. And Keely was born with a very serious heart condition. She was born with what they refer to as a blue baby. So the doctors, after I had her, I breastfed her, and then the doctors took her away, and they could see that her color was changing quite rapidly. And it wasn't until 1 a.m. I had Keely around 9 p.m., and it wasn't until 1 a.m. that the doctor came to my room. And I knew as soon as he walked through the door that something was going on before he opened his mouth, because, of course, doctors don't come and see you at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So just I still to this day remember that sinking feeling of seeing him walk through the door and knowing that there was going to be bad news coming. So he explained to me what had occurred and said that there was a helicopter on its way, and they would be taking Keely to Sick Kids Hospital. So they wanted to keep me in hospital that next morning, and my family doctor had heard what had happened, and she came to visit me, and I told her, I'm not staying, I'm going. She didn't argue with me.
Yeah.
You know, she's, yeah, of course you are. So she signed me out, and we went to home, packed a bag, went straight to Sick Kids Hospital. We had hoped one of us would have been able to travel down to the hospital with her, but they wouldn't allow that. And I remember making the phone call to my husband to say, honey, the doctor just came in. This is what's going on. He had literally just arrived home and was putting his pajamas and getting himself into bed when I called him. And so, you know, putting the jeans back on, back in the car, back to the hospital he came. I think it was 2 or 3 days with us getting sleep. Back to Sick Kids, or down to Sick Kids we went. I just remember seeing her in the unit because they had placed her in with all the preemies, and the preemies were, you know, I could have held them in the palm of my hand, but she was born as a 7-pound, 9-ounce baby.
Yeah.
So she just looked massive in comparison to all these other little babies. But seeing her in bed, and she was all tangled up in tubes. You know, they had something in her head and something in her arm, and just she was attached to so many wires, and it was just a very unreal, surreal, scary thing to see.
Yeah. And I'm assuming a lot of fears as well that you were going to lose her after you lost your son. And
yeah, we didn't. And in talking to the doctors, there wasn't a lot they could tell us. What we came to learn was her condition. 10 years previous, they wouldn't have known what to do, and those babies typically died within days.
Yeah.
And over the years, they had learned how to do the surgeries that were necessary. But there was such mixed information that we were provided with. So nobody could really tell us what her prognosis was going to be. Nobody could tell us if there were going to be any other medical issues outside of her heart, because the heart affects so much. So, you know, we just kind of held our breath and did a lot of praying over the first few days. She had her first surgery at 3 days old. She had her second surgery at 14 months. She had her third surgery at 24 months. But even that last surgery, the third one that she had, we weren't sure if she was even going to be able to have that, because 6 months before that surgery happened, she had a medical condition, and it was something that they didn't know how to deal with. But when she had her pre-surgery update, that medical condition disappeared. And they'd only seen that happen once before.
Right. Wow.
So I've always referred to her as the miracle baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if that condition was still there, they wouldn't have been able to move forward with the surgery.
Yeah.
So
either way, a lot of different experiences that for sure helped you in your role with the bereavement organization for 5 years.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was a few years after she went through all those things that I was dealing with what I would say is depression. But it wasn't really brought to my attention until having a conversation with a really good friend that she says, well, you're grieving. And I said, but, I did that already. And she says, but did you? Because we had one pregnancy after another. I think our coping strategy was, okay, let's have another child.
Yeah.
Okay, let's have another child, in the hopes of having that positive, reinforcement. And so I hadn't really grieved the previous births, the children that I had, the miscarriage.
How many weeks was the first miscarriage?
I had just passed the 3-month point. I was almost 4 months. So of course they always say, get through your first 3 months and then you can share.
Yeah.
Well, I literally had just started sharing with people, and then I had the miscarriage.
Yeah.
So, and then we got back on the horse, had the pregnancy with Thayer, and I was on bed rest for 5 months with his pregnancy, which was a really difficult 5 months. And then we had him. We had the funeral, and then after a couple of months, let's try again.
Yeah.
So, and with Keely, having her come through everything as well as she did, I just thought, but, everything's gone so well. Why would I be grieving now? Well, you're grieving now because you didn't before.
Yeah.
So that's when I sought the help from bereaved families and going to those support groups and educating myself around grief and what grief really is and how we go through it. And because it does vary for a variety of people, but you still have to go through it in your own way.
Yeah.
And so
I'm assuming through that organization, you probably also had some probably horror stories of people that lost.
Stories that as difficult. It's incredible when you experience being in the hospital and going through all the things that you go through. There's, no matter what your situation is, it's hard to imagine, but there are people out there that have had it even more difficult than you. And when you hear some of those stories, and you can actually look at yourself and say, yes, it was such a difficult time, and we went through such difficult years, and yet we brought her home. Or, there was always somebody that I met who I couldn't imagine going through what they were going through. It's just, it's heartbreaking.
What did 5 years at that organization teach you kind of about life and about people? Because you're seeing people in their hardest spots, people that have lost, young kids, probably multiple kids at a time, or just all kinds of things.
Yeah. Resiliency. The resiliency that we have is, as a human race, is incredible. It truly is. And because I heard stories of, suicide, of people who had actually witnessed their child jumping off a building,
Oh,
who
goodness.
had found loved ones,
Yeah.
after hanging themselves, who had, I can't imagine some of those other scenarios. And so I came to understand that we all have a story. There's other situations of loss that we've dealt with. So many stories, so much hurt, but the resiliency we have as a human race to get through those things. And what gets us through those things is such a variety. For some people, it is absolutely their faith. For other people, it's hope. For some, it's who they've leaned on through the years and how many people have surrounded them to prop them up and be there for them. It can be such a variety of things. And I learned that there's really no right and wrong to how people get through those things. It's really just about getting through them in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So there's unhealthy and healthy means of how we cope and get through those things, but not in the sense of right and wrong.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. It's definitely a heavy topic.
It's very heavy.
So after that, you left that organization? It seems like 5 years is your cap point a lot of times.
It's interesting because if I look back on my years of work, it has been 5-year cycles. So one of the things that I didn't talk about was after leaving Kerr Street Ministries, my husband and I during that time had been doing a lot of work with the youth in our church. And it was another scenario of the government coming in and stipulating that volunteerism for youth they saw as being sort of a very important part of education and growth. And so that's when the boards of education implemented 40 hours of volunteer work that youth had to do for the purposes of graduating. And so my husband and I had the opportunity to talk to all the youth we were working with through the church about volunteerism. And when you're in a church environment, there often is a lot of opportunity to do that. Most churches provide volunteer opportunities for kids, but for those that weren't a part of a church environment, many of them didn't know, where do I go and who do I talk to? And I've never had a job before, and I've never written a resume. I've never done an interview. So there was this very organic role that I took on in helping youth find that. And we actually turned that into the development of an organization, a not-for-profit called Community Youth in Action.
Yeah.
And I had started that organically in our home with bringing youth together to have conversations about those things that they needed to do. And so after some time, we developed a logo and incorporated and got our charitable status and all those pieces. So when the opportunity came about at Bereaved Families, I had already sort of started this organic process of Community Youth in Action Network. So I was actually doing both at the same time. And after those 5 years, our daughter had come to us and indicated that when she was done university, her plan was to go west. With my parents having been transferred out here 30, or at that time it would have been approximately 25 years prior, our daughter was saying, she had grown up coming out here every summer, had experienced the weather, the climate, the mountains, the oceans, the lakes, and really quite liked it. So she said, that's where I plan on going. And with her being our only one, and with my parents both being in Vancouver, and my brother at the time of that transfer still being in high school, he also came along. He, at that time, had gotten married, had a couple of kids. So there wasn't really anything holding us back in Ontario. So my husband and I had a discussion, and over the years we had talked about whether or not we would at some point move out this way. It was of interest to us, but knowing that our one and only was coming out here and the rest of my family was out here, we decided, okay, we need to start planning for this.
Yeah. Kind of a little bit off topic question. You say it's your one and only. Sometimes when people ask me how many kids you have, I instantly think 4, but I usually say 3 because I don't want to have the whole conversation about grace and stuff like that and make it awkward. Do you have that same thing? Do you think 3 in your head, or do you
in my head, I don't.
Okay.
But when I'm in conversation, if somebody asks me how many children, I will say 1.
Okay.
And for the same reason, it can be a lengthy conversation, and it's not. I found over the years, it's something that automatically makes people feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah. They don't know how to respond. Yeah,
they don't know how to respond. Then all of a sudden there's this awkward, oh, I'm so sorry, da-da-da-da-da-da. I've become more comfortable with saying it. So if I'm in a conversation we're talking about loss, absolutely I will share my story. And how much detail I provide depends on the circumstance and who I'm talking with. Yeah. But for the most part, yes, I say, Keeley only.
Yeah. That's fair. I was just kind of curious how other people have done it. So, okay, so your daughter comes out west, you guys come out west, and then what organization did you start working for then?
So I was able to find a position with United Way.
Okay.
And so that position is what brought us out here. And then my husband was left behind to take care of all the necessities of the move. And
United Way is what?
So United Way is an organization that has a 100-year history. They've always raised funds for the not-for-profit sector, and or I should say the charitable sector. And I was brought on as a staff who looked over corporate campaigns. So I had 3 portfolios, 3 sectors that I looked after, and would help them in developing the campaigns that they would run within their environment, their corporate environment, that would raise funds for United Way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long did you do that for?
I was with them for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting sort of stage of life because my husband, in coming out to BC, had difficulty finding work. And the reason being is Ontario, and I guess we didn't really give this much thought in coming out, Ontario truly is the hub of business. And so I'd say probably 90% of companies, that's where the head offices are.
Yeah.
And so at the time, he had been working for a company called Stanley. He was overseeing 3 divisions of that company nationally. And so those types of jobs didn't really exist out here in BC. You might find regional, offices. So it was a tough go for him because most companies would, the question is, why this job, why this work? You're overqualified. And I think when somebody deems you overqualified, the concern is as soon as something better comes along, you're going to move on. And so it so happened that we were living at the time next door to someone who was a retired lawyer, and he was dabbling in real estate. And so he asked my husband, why don't you come and join me in on sort of this venture? My husband, German background, a father who was very handy. My husband learned very early on plumbing, electrical, laying down floor. He helped his dad basically rebuild their house.
Yeah.
And so he said, okay, I'll give it a go. And to his surprise, he was really loving what they were doing. But he wanted to take it a step further. I think our neighbor was doing things sort of lipstick, let's freshen it up. Whereas my husband really wanted to kind of like, let's tear down walls and put new ones up and take it right down to the studs. And so the decision was made that he was going to go off and do his own thing. I think because I wasn't really enjoying my job at United Way. I wasn't comfortable there.
Yeah.
It was quite a toxic environment.
Yeah.
And I needed to step away. And so I asked him if, would you mind if I joined you and helped you do this work? So we incorporated, and that's what we were doing for a number of years. So I think there was about 12 renovation projects we did over a period of 6 years.
Okay.
So we were working 7 days a week.
Oh, wow.
And I was quite enjoying myself. I think just it was the break that I needed. I think having been in the not-for-profit, it was always very demanding work, emotionally demanding, mentally, even physically.
Yeah.
So it gave me a time to step away and reflect on a lot of things. In the days that I was painting, I think a lot of people would deem that to be sort of monotonous. And I'm like, it wasn't. It was a time where I could just think and be in my own head.
Process.
And process things. And so it ended up being very cathartic for me.
Okay.
And then things changed. Then COVID hit. Things changed. The real estate market was sort of going a little out of
control.
Whack. Yeah. It was nuts. And COVID brought about incredibly high increases in materials and everything else. And so we kind of gave it a break, and we were waiting for things to sort of calm again. And after about 18 months, that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
And we were both starting to get a little antsy. And I, had a talk with my husband and said, I think I'm ready to go back to the not-for-profit. And it was just a very timely conversation, because literally within a week or two of having that conversation, I received a call from a headhunter, and it seemed that Big Brothers Big Sisters was looking for an executive director, and thought that it might be a good fit for me. And
okay, cool. And were you quite aware of Big Brothers Big Sisters before then, or?
Very aware.
Okay.
Big Brothers Big Sisters has been in community for over 100 years. They're international. They and so my basically coming up in the not-for-profit sector throughout my career, it was an organization that was always seated around the table, the community tables that I was at.
Yeah.
We often worked in tandem with them, because for a family service, we would come across families who possibly weren't aware of, if I was dealing with a single mother and she was trying to raise 2 or 3 kids and she didn't know that there was an organization that could bring somebody else into
So
their
maybe
life.
in a nutshell, what is Big Brothers Big Sisters? What do they do?
So Big Brothers Big Sisters is an organization that helps to find caring, compassionate people who have a love of kids, who would work as great mentors in their lives. And so we bring about these mentors that we match with children age 6 to 18. And then the kids do age out of our program at 18, but often if they've been matched with a mentor from, early on in their years, those relationships, they stick.
Yeah.
And they morph and they change, but often those relationships carry on for many years after.
Yeah.
So
what are the greatest needs right now of the organization?
Well, we always throughout a period, over an annual year can have anywhere between 30 to 70 kids on our wait list. And we do have some children, I think 40% of those kids often have been on that waiting list for 18 months or more.
Oh.
And our aim is to really bring that time down so that, a child isn't waiting more than 6 to 9 months, if possible. Because our biggest fear is that those kids age out of our program before we've even had a chance to really help them. Mm. And I think, we've seen through research and time that early intervention is the best course of action. Yeah. So if those kids are coming to us at the age of 6 or 7, 8 years old, if we can get a mentor in place very early on, that's always going to benefit the kids the best.
Big need for mentors.
Big need for mentors.
And what is the expectation of a mentor?
So we have many ways to mentor. So we have an in-school program that runs in the elementary schools. And we can match those elementary kids with an adult mentor or a teen mentor. Okay. And so we do have mentors that start as early as the age of 16 who are in high school and who can manage to get themselves to the elementary school to mentor a elementary child for an hour a week, 2 hours if possible, but an hour a week. So the in-school mentoring is one. The community mentoring is very different. It's more flexible. And so the child and the mentor decide upon themselves when they're going to get together, how often, but we ask for a minimum of an hour a week, and they can go off in community and do a variety of things. It can be going for a walk or hiking. It can be going out for an ice cream. It can be having a picnic in a park. But the important thing is for us to try and find a mentor and child who will really click. So we try to find out the interests of that mentee. Are they sports-minded? Do they like arts and crafts? Are they big readers? Do they like indoor or outdoor activities? And when talking to our mentors, finding out what their likes are, finding out if they have an age that they feel more comfortable in working with. Some people would prefer to work with somebody in their teens. Other people are more comfortable with an elementary age child. So we try to make sure that our matches are just really well matched. And then, there's a hefty process for a mentor to go through. And of course, the reason for that is the security and safety of our kids. But it's well worth going through that, because if you find, that mentee that you really click with, it's going to be the best case scenario. Yeah. And I think in conversations that we've had, getting feedback from our mentors, they come in wanting to be able to provide the best, that they can for their mentees. However, they come to realize there's this gift in that there's so much that they themselves get out of it.
Yeah.
There's a joy that comes from working with these kids and seeing how much they learn and how much they come out of their shell. They see a difference in their level of confidence.
Better to give than receive.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's what I find such a fun and interesting part of what we do, is seeing all that they themselves get out of it.
Yeah.
Coming forward, knowing that there's so much that they can give, but also so much that they
yeah.
receive. Yeah.
So if someone's interested in doing that, becoming a mentor, or just like wants to learn more about it, what's the best way to contact your organization?
Yeah, so if they have questions that they need answers to before putting forward an application, just to call us. You can go to our website and get our contact information and just pick up the phone and call us or send us an email. But if they feel that they're ready to take that step and apply, the application process is right on the website. It links us to our staff, and our staff will forward to you all of the required documentation that they have to fill out. And then once our staff receives all that documentation, they reach out, they schedule a time to meet with you and do an interview process. And then they start digging into our list of children that we have on the wait list, and they start looking at those matches. There's also a lot of conversation that is had on the side of the family too, so that we ensure that expectations are realistic around everybody's needs. It's important that the families understand too that mentor is there for their child, not for them. But if they need additional supports, then our program staff and sometimes the mentors can ensure that the family receives all that information. We get them connected to as many supports and community as we can.
Yeah.
But
cool.
Yeah.
I like that. I want to switch to just more general questions about nonprofit. So you've been in that sector for a long time. What are some of the things that you think are, maybe, I don't know if you want to use the word pitfalls, or just different things that you've learned about nonprofit that need to change or improve? Like generally in charitable organizations, it's not profit driven like a business, so there can be a lot of waste. I think that's kind of a given one, but just more in general, like what do you, as you think about nonprofit, like, and some of the parts that you wish were different or maybe that have shifted over the years? Maybe kind of an open-ended question, but
Sure. Wow. It's a big question. I think the thing about nonprofit, and it's just recently I found that people in the business sector are starting to recognize us as being such a important entity in our communities. And we're starting to gain it a little bit more, I think, respect. So, for instance, the chambers of commerce now are inviting us to the table. We're not segregated in the way that we used to be, that there's local business and there's not profit.
Okay.
They see that we have an important role in the health of our community, and we are now invited in as part of that community network, not segregated the way we used to be. But having said that, there's still very much this mentality that as a not-for-profit, that staff, there's always a lot of talk about, oh my goodness, like your staff makes so much money. Oh my goodness, your salaries are, very inflated, or, your ED or your CEO, gets too much money. And so there's still a discrepancy there with regards to expectations. So being in the not-for-profit as long as I have been, I just, the sector, the staff that work in the sector, just give so much. And I think that they work as hard, if not harder, than anybody in the business sector. And yet the pay scale shows that there's still not that respect for the work that they do.
Yeah. So you don't think there's enough donations going to those big to the organization then, or just more how they view it? Because in a business, you can just look at the numbers and say, hey, we can afford to pay more.
Yeah.
If you're not getting enough donations in, it doesn't matter how much you want to pay more, you can't.
Exactly. No, and that's very true. I mean, our scale is always based on what's coming in. We can't spend more than what we receive.
Yeah.
So you always have to be looking at that. But it's more of this psychological that those in the not-for-profit should be doing without. And we can only do the best work we can, making sure that we have all the tools that we need.
Yeah.
So often in a not-for-profit, you'll be seeing, 10 employees doing the work of 15. Or you'll be seeing them going without, a comfortable desk, or making sure that from a health perspective, a business wouldn't think twice about getting things that are ergonomically correct, for people, so that they're not getting injuries and back problems and all those things. But that would be seen as being
waste.
Very privileged to be providing to a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
Well, the health of our staff are just as important, because we want to ensure that they can do the best work that they can.
Yeah.
We want to ensure their health, just as a business would be expected to ensure the health of the people that are working for them. And
do you see it as a skill? Because I know, I've been part of businesses that when they were just starting up, money's super tight and they can't afford very little for their staff. And as that organization grows, there's more profit, so they have that ability. Are you saying that even when it's a big nonprofit and there's lots of money coming in, there's still kind of a pushback against
yes.
Okay.
A business knows that to become successful, a certain number of dollars has to be spent on community awareness. So there's a budget that's set aside for marketing, social media, having a marketing expert, being able to do the best on that side, because that's the way they're going to become known in community.
Yeah.
In the not-for-profit sector, trying to find funding dollars to be able to market yourself is almost non-existent, because they don't see a value to that.
Who's they?
So funders,
Okay.
So foundations, donors often don't see, we'll often hear the terms, well, I want this going directly to the kids.
Yeah.
So within our organization, we do run certain programming. We have events that match events that people can come to. But the reality is that much of our funding goes to staff, because our staff don't work directly with the kids. It's our mentors that work directly with the kids.
Yeah.
But we need the staff to recruit, to develop our programs, to do all these other things. So we are very volunteer driven with regards to what's provided to those children.
Yeah.
But we need our staff to do all those other pieces that help us to bring those mentors forward. So if our staff aren't out visiting businesses, doing presentations, being out in community, developing our policies and procedures, running those match events, how do we attract those people to us?
Yeah.
So it's, and yet it's very funny that, somebody in the business sector wouldn't see the value to do for us
Yeah.
what they do within their own environment.
Yeah. And that's quite common still, like as you're talking to.
It is. It is still quite common. It's improved, but there still needs to be more improvement there. There still needs to be an understanding that our back end, for us to be successful in what we do, our back end does have to run as a business. We still have to do our budgeting. We still have to look at all those pieces that make a business successful. So that there's still a little bit of a discrepancy there between the thought of business and what makes it successful in comparison to what makes a not-for-profit successful.
Yeah. You think there's going to be more needs for, or maybe not needs, but more just nonprofits popping up because churches are declining in the Western world, and it's not Christianity is kind of in the decline in general, and they've historically been the caring of the people needs, whatever that is, that the church has had a big and still does have a big impact in that. But do you see it all like a decline or a shift in that?
I think I've seen a decline over the years, but not just from the perspective of the number of people that are in the church community, but from the way our society has gone with regards to policy and procedure. So what I mean by that is when I was growing up, churches always had open doors. So the church and the schools were seen as the hubs of a community. And if a family needed support, that's where they could go. And if you wanted to keep the kids off the school, well, the churches typically had meeting rooms and gyms and all those kind of things that could be used for extracurricular activities. But the churches don't make those things available to the community anymore.
Interesting. Because
of costs, because of concern of their environment being ransacked or destroyed or damaged, because insurance has become a big thing, being sued for whatever. So it's the schools and the hubs aren't utilized in those ways like they used to when I grew up.
Okay.
It was very common for us to go to a local church gym and play basketball, volleyball. It was kind of made available to the community and to the youth for those purposes.
Yeah.
We're not finding that anymore. As a not-for-profit, for us to be able to find recreational space for us to do activities has become extremely costly.
Okay.
So we're having to put out a lot of money in renting facilities because those aren't being made available to the community the way they used to.
Interesting. I think, something we're going to think about more because I wasn't aware of that. I mean, I wasn't around back then either, but I can see how, that's going to make a big shift. And I mean, those people are still needing something. If anything, the needs have gone up. So
they've gone up for sure. We find over the last few years, I don't know if you had the opportunity to read the last report that came out from the Mental Health Association. We're not doing well.
Yeah.
We're not doing well in BC. We're not doing well across the country. The number of children that are dealing with so many mental health situations with themselves, but also within the dynamic of their families and within the dynamic of their communities. Levels of anxiety have gone up, levels of fear, confidence has declined in them.
And you think that's due to the breakdown of families? Do you think that's social media? Do you have an opinion on that?
I do. I don't think it's any one thing. I think there's many things that have occurred over the years. Definitely, if we look, let's say from the 70s till now, There's been much more of an increase in rates of divorce, so breakdown of family for sure. There's been a higher increase of addiction. We've gone through a huge opioid crisis, and we know where things stand right now in community. The addictions has risen through the roof, and we're trying to find ways of dealing with that. The social media, the internet, all those things. If you go back in researching where we were with the situation of mental health, let's say in the early 2000s, going back even to the 80s and 90s, everything was kind of holding steady. And then when you look at when everything increased with social media, you will see a significant increase in cases of mental health issues with kids from sort of 2010 on.
Yeah.
Because that's when everything kind of blew up with
all that stuff.
I think with children, one of the things that has happened is intellectually, there's so much information they have access to now that they can mentally understand. But they don't have enough life experience to have the emotional ability, the EQ, to deal with all these things. As adults, we're struggling to understand what's happening in the world. We're having struggles understanding all of the atrocities that are, and there's been quite a political shift and I believe, a moral shift in the fabric of our society, world. Yeah. So if we're struggling to wrap our minds around that, how does a child of 8, 10, 12, 14, 16-year-old deal with that when they have not had the life experience to be able to take that all in and wrestle with it?
Understand it.
Yeah.
You need to be taught. Okay. Hey guys, I just wanted to interrupt here and talk briefly about my coaching. One of the things I've observed over the last couple of years in the guys that I work with, and just a demographic of guys from 25 to 45 and even older, is that they're missing 4 big pillars of security in this life. And so the first is they don't trust the government. There used to be some sort of trust in the government, but that's gone. And so there's no more security there. They don't have much hope for the future. They think the world's going to crap, so not much hope for that. They believe 80 or 90% of what they grew up with in church is bullshit. They don't trust the church. And then fourthly, they had absentee dads. So maybe their dads were physically around, but not emotionally. And so you have no more moorings in this life. All those things are things that give you security. And so you feel very isolated. And so you're 30, 35, 40 years old, and you feel like you should have your crap together, but you don't. And so you feel shame. And then you isolate and actually withhold yourself from other people. And you're also having a really hard time figuring out what you believe because your dad never believed in you. These other things that tell you what you to believe in, the church or the government, you can't really trust either, but you don't really trust yourself because you've never been believed in, and so feel very lost. And so you don't really know what to believe in, and then it's really hard to know how to behave and how to show up. And so you feel very lost and isolated. And those are the kind of guys I work with. That was very much my own story as well. And what coaching really does is it doesn't change you in 10 weeks, but it gives you extreme awareness so you can change. So you do know what's going on and understand where the feelings of emptiness come from, where the feelings of lack of security come from, where and how that affects you in your work, how that affects you in your home. And once you deal with those things, there's just massive implications for it in a positive way, where you live with so much more peace and intention and know where you're going and why you're doing it. And if any of that resonates with you and you feel like that's kind of where you're at, I would love the chance to be able to work with you. I'm very good at the coaching I do. You can see that on my website, testimonials of the guys I've worked with, how effective it is, and your life will be much better for it as well. And so if that's you, please do reach out to me. You can hit me on my socials, or you can reach out to me through my email as well, kyle@furiouslycurious.co. On my website, you can just book a discovery call and see what it's all about. And yeah, we can go from there. So anyways, with that, let's head back to the show. Okay, I want to switch the topic to Christian ethics, and I want you to challenge me a little bit on my thinking.
Ooh, okay.
And so I'm a little bit nervous to talk about it, but I think it's important that we talk about it and just have
Yeah.
open conversations about these things. So it kind of stemmed from that article that you shared on LinkedIn that I read by Ray Williams, which was titled "The American Christian Rights: Growing Influence in Canada, a Threat to Rights and Democracy." And so it was talking about the Alliance Defending Freedom organization that was trying to roll back abortion and LGBTQ rights in the US, and that they were trying to do that in Canada as well. And so I'm pretty conservative in my views on these issues. So I believe that life starts at conception, and that we should protect it at that point. I'm for traditional marriage, but I'm also very, I believe Jesus, when he came on earth, he didn't come to condemn, he came to save. And I try to take that same approach as well, that if someone has had an abortion, I'm not there to condemn them. I just believe in protecting the rights of the unborn, as if they're just as, you had a 12-week baby that died. We've held the babies, and so, but this article would have labeled me as a hate group. Because I have those views. Would you agree then that I would be a hate group, or what do you think I'm missing? Or I wanted just to have an opportunity to let you challenge me on my thinking, or what you think maybe I'm missing, or.
Sure. I would not label hate group. But my concern with where Christianity has gone, and this is not directed at all of Christianity. I was not brought up as a Christian, but I became a Christian in my teenage years after doing a lot of research. And it was the right decision for me to make. However, I am very open to many, many faith groups. And that's probably because of the fact that through my teen years, I visited many, many churches. I had a lot of conversation with people. I was a part of the Baha'i community for a number of years. And what I found is when you break it all down, each faith group has more in common with one another than they have what separates them. Actually, in my research, very few things separate them. However, I understand for some people, those things that do separate them carry significant meaning. But when I look at what's been happening in, let's say, the alt-right, a lot of things I think have been twisted and what's the word? Just used for their own benefit rather than looking at things for the benefit of all. Now, I have a difference of opinion with regards to a child from conception. For me, it's when a child becomes viable. Because in the early stages, if we brought out the child, let's say from the womb, it cannot survive on its own. And that's not to say that it's not going to get there.
Yeah.
But at that point, there's nothing the doctors can do or we can do to save that child. So we have a difference of opinion there.
Except for not take its life. That would make it survive.
Yes. Okay. I see what you're saying, because you're not allowing it to its end.
Yeah.
But there's also has to be a balance as to, because there are two individuals that are part of that story.
Yeah.
The mother and the baby. And you also have to consider what's best for the mother. And what I find in our society is there's a lot of talk about the infant.
Yeah.
Up until its birth. And if the mother is not positioned to be able to look after the baby, then what?
Yeah.
So you have to, if you're going to be pro-life is looking after a child past
That's right. Yeah.
the period of birth. And that's not happening in our society.
Yeah.
That's not happening. And so the child is growing up without proper parenting. The child is being tossed from foster care to foster care. It's not being fed properly. It's not being educated. It's not being, the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
So when our society can do the right thing by making sure that we are providing the best care for that child after it's born, then I would say I completely understand the pro-life
View.
view.
So would you be pro-life after viability?
Yes.
Okay. Because so in Canada right now, I think it's Canada, China, and North Korea have 0 laws on abortion. So I think the National Post just did an article where they had some reporters who were 8 months pregnant and they could go into an abortion clinic and terminate the baby's pregnancy. So would you be for then an amendment to the law, which actually the Supreme Court told the government of Canada to do, I think in the 90s, to say, hey, after viability, we can no longer terminate?
Mm-hmm. So so for me, I am still, as a Christian, pro mother's choice. So whatever happens for me, I would say after viability, for me personally, I would not want to terminate, but that's my personal choice.
Yeah.
I am not comfortable with making that choice for any other woman. I do not know what their circumstances. I do not know what their history has been.
Yeah.
I do. And when we're talking about the health of a person, that's holistic.
Yeah.
Their health is mental health, psychological health, spiritual, physical.
So if a baby would be born at 28 weeks, for example, which happens sometimes, and they can survive, and the mother realizes, hey, I don't know if I can handle this. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that once you're out of the womb, you wouldn't be okay with terminating the baby anymore, because they're not at 40 weeks yet.
No.
So it's just a location issue then, because they're physically in the mom's body, then it's okay to terminate. But if as soon as they're out, then it's not okay anymore.
Well, for me, once a child is viable, if they're out of the womb, they're now a living human being if they're able to survive.
Yeah.
If you kill them at that point, that's called murder.
Yeah. But then, so if at 28 weeks, a lot of babies are still in the womb at 28 weeks.
Yep.
And so in the womb, it wouldn't be, but as soon as it's born at 28 weeks, it would be?
When it's out of the mother's womb, then I think we have a responsibility to be looking after that baby. Before that, it's the mother's responsibility to decide what is right for her. And what I find is that within our society, we're still dealing with patriotic views. And we are not dealing with what's best for the mother. And until that baby is out of the womb and viable, the first care should go to the mother.
Yeah.
Not.
Not the baby.
No.
Okay, so you would say that the baby then is less valuable than the mother at that point.
I would say I don't think it's a matter of valuable.
Or less of a person then, or less of a...
Well, if they're not viable, if they can't manage to not take care of themselves, but viable to live, then I believe that the mother's care has to come first, because that is the primary person that needs to be looked after at that point.
Okay, so I mean, we could probably talk to blue in the face on this topic, and it's a very controversial topic. But I think the question that I have is, so I have these, like, say, for example, LGBTQ rights as well. Like, I believe that kids, at 5 years old or 10 years old, don't have the wherewithal to decide what career they want to pick, or if they need to have a license, like to start driving yet and stuff like that. So I don't believe that they should be able to have the rights to change their sex, because that's just a huge decision when they're not fully developed yet. I, before traditional marriage, I'm for life at conception. But I deeply care about women, about babies, about people that are hurting. I'll have LGBTQ people over to my house for meals and stuff like that, and I try to love on those people. I'm not, having a sign that says you're going to hell, which is extremely damaging, and crazy things like that. And so that the article, and I know you didn't write it and stuff like that, but I know there's Christians that have the views of maybe on big swaths saying like, hey, you can't say those things. You can't have that opinion. You can't have those views. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I can't change how I believe about these things. I can be open to being challenged about them.
Yeah.
So I can change. I'm very open to that. But now even there's an amendment that they're proposing right now to Bill C6 that removes the religious exemption to having these convictions. And so you could start getting criminalized. Like there in the UK, you get criminalized if you, don't use certain pronouns, or if you do those things. And so I find it very confusing that I would get these labels put on me when I'm like, I don't think I am. I'm trying to be pretty loving and caring and acknowledging of my own failures and stuff like that. So any advice, any thoughts around that?
Well, having known you and spoken with you, I totally agree. But I think the way you handle things is very different than some Christians. So it is about loving. It is about being accepting of those individuals, despite what their feelings and thoughts are and the decisions that they make. And that's where we separate things, is because as a Christian, if I call myself a Christian, if I consider myself a Christian, then in that, I'm called upon to and held to account to live my life in a particular way, and to make particular decisions based on what I think that Christianity means. But that's my responsibility in calling myself a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the right to expect that of other people.
That's right.
I don't have the right to expect that of a Buddhist or a Jewish individual, or whatever the faith may be, or may not be, because they may not be of any faith.
Yeah.
I need to hold myself to account for what I believe.
Yeah.
I do not have the right to hold other people to account for what I believe.
Yeah.
So that's where things for me change.
So then also on the flip side, then people that have the opposite views of Christianity can't dictate what a Christian can believe or should believe.
Exactly. So you have certain beliefs. I don't agree with them all, but at the same time, I'm not judging you for them. because I don't have the right to do that.
Hmm.
Unless you are causing harm to someone else, that's when I feel as a Christian I need to step in.
Hmm.
And that's where, but if you are doing things in love, then that's fine.
Yeah.
So for me, it's...
So if I believe that it's harmful to take a baby's life and I'm doing it in love, let's say there's a Christian group that does that, has that view. Can you understand why they might be as passionate as they are if they really believe in that, a 2-week-old baby in the womb having the same rights as an adult, that they would say, okay, we believe that baby is being harmed. We care about the baby and the mother. Let's say it's an organization that cares just as much for the mother as the baby, that they would pursue that, and that they're not doing it just to, be Bible thumpers or whatever the thing is.
Yes. So I believe that within your Christian community, that's what you live by. You and your wife have the rights to make those decisions for yourself.
Yeah.
But there's a reason church and state have been separated.
Yeah.
Because our government has a responsibility to look after everyone. And so there are a lot of people who are not Christian.
Yeah.
And the government still has to be responsible for them.
Yeah.
Even for myself as a Christian, I believe that until a child is born and viable, the mother's care comes first. And for me, the reason for that is because of all those things that I stated before.
Yeah.
There are far too many children brought into this world who are uncared for, who are having horrible experiences, who are not being nourished in all the most positive ways they can be.
Yeah.
So for me, until that changes, the mother will always, her care will always come first in my mind. We live in a very patriarchal society. And what I am finding is women are getting very tired of being told what they need to do, should do, how to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to bring things that are a religious belief into our government,
Yeah.
no. Christians should live the way they believe is right because they are accountable to do what they feel is right. They do not have the right to bring those laws into government because government is responsible for all.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess my response to or my thoughts around that would be that the government's responsible for all, including the unborn. Just like they would disagree with murder, as in it, like outside the womb, they should disagree with it inside the womb. But I think we're going back now just to the debate on abortion, and I wanted to switch more to the just like, for example, this amendment that the government wants to pass on like religious freedoms to share those beliefs, because I agree that it's not up to me to believe what someone else believes, like that. I can try to challenge them and persuade them in a respectful, loving way. I think that's okay, but it's not for me to just like to force that on anybody. Like we're free beings, and I also don't want the government to start telling me what I should believe or can teach my kids or those kind of things, because then the whole thing is flipped. Then what the Christians have maybe traditionally done in a bad way to everyone else, enforcing certain things. Now the government's forcing certain things, and so. Would you agree with that, or do you think that the government should be able to, say no, you have to teach your kids this thing, or you have to do X, Y, Z?
No, I think when it's a responsibility, I think for our government, for our education system, to, again, provide information that is good for everybody. As a Christian person, it's my responsibility as a parent to decide and have conversation with my kids about what I feel is right and wrong and the reasons why. So as you were saying, when it comes to loving others and not passing judgment and being inclusive with those individuals, despite your differences of opinion, we want the same thing to be happening within our schools. And when we talked about the LGBTQ community, I think that for the majority of people, I think most of them now, there aren't many that would go as far as going through a sexual transition, but still the reality of them feeling the way that they do, I've had conversations with people and they say, oh, well, don't throw that medical mumbo jumbo at me. But that medical mumbo jumbo is very real. Science is science. Fact is fact. So I've stated previously, if I think of my daughter's situation of being born with a heart condition, well, within our being, there are multiple things that are involved in who we are sexually.
Yeah.
So we may look one way on the outside, but that doesn't mean that everything that's related to that on the inside is as it should be. So if a child at a young age feels like they should be a boy rather than a girl or vice versa, there's no way for us to know what is it within their being that makes them feel that way.
Yeah.
Because science has shown that there's so much of our makeup internally, our how our cells have been generated, our hormones, our so many things. There are cases where a child has been brought up as a female simply because the penis never dropped. And they were always quite comfortable that way. Is there something hormonally, genetically that has happened or occurred? So I think there's these very harsh judgments being made about they choose to be that way. I don't feel that's the case. I'm not sure that somebody is sitting there all of a sudden saying, I want to be a boy. I want to be a girl. Whenever I've had conversation with people, it's always been, I've never felt that way. I've never felt like a girl. I've never felt like a boy. So to me, there's more going on there. There's something within their being that is making them feel that way. And I don't think our science, it's starting to catch up to that, but we haven't gotten there yet. When I think of my daughter having her heart condition, after her birth, we went to see a pediatrician. And he redirected us to somebody else because this other doctor, and I thank God for him every day, Dr. Egger, he had a son born 10 years before Keely with the exact same condition she had. And his son only lived to be 10 years old because at the time of his birth, they hadn't figured out yet all the intricacies of what needed to be done. So at the age of 10, he had one very long 12-hour procedure. That took a huge toll on his body, and he didn't survive much longer after that. When Keely was born 10 years later, over the period of those 10 years, they learned all these things about the better ways of doing. And that's why when she was born, what Dr. Egger's son had done, all in this 12-hour surgery, was done in 3 different steps for our daughter. And being able to break down what needed to be done, being able to figure out the intricacies of all that was there.
Yeah.
She's now 33 years old. So she was able to survive something 10 years later because of what they had learned.
Yeah.
I think with the LGBTQ community, at some point, we'll figure out in science why somebody who looks like a male feels like a female and vice versa. I don't think we're quite there yet, but what we are learning is that there are differences in the bodies.
Yeah.
Internally, there's way too many components of what we're made of for us to say to somebody, oh, you're choosing to be that way.
Yeah.
It's simply what they feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, for me, it's more the issue of, like, for example, my wife, she was a Tom boy when growing up. She was always into sports and soccer, and she just wanted to hang out with the boys. And I fear that there's girls like that nowadays that might be doing that. And there's an encouragement to be like, well, maybe you actually are a boy. And then they go get surgery done that removes the uterus, whatever, and more changes like that. And also when they're 15 or 18 years old, they're like, well, I just like soccer and I just like tractors, but now a whole bunch of damage has been done because they felt a certain way. And so, I mean, I don't get to decide what someone does when their body, when they're an adult, but as a child, we know that we can feel all kinds of things. And so I just am, when saying to a kid, hey, we're going to control almost all of your decisions, even like what time you go to bed. Just because you feel like you should go to bed at 10 o'clock doesn't mean you shouldn't go to bed at 7.
Yeah.
But then this area, it's like, no, okay, if you want to do this, then we'll change your body now. And I'm like, whoa, that seems pretty extreme. And not to say, no, we should, if someone feels that way, like they do feel that way, right? That should be addressed, but not to go make physical changes to their body. I think that's really scary. Actually, the UK has actually gone back on their laws now and said, hey, we're going to stop doing this. But I guess also the other side of it is, like, even having this opinion sometimes will get you just swatted because, you're not being considerate of these kids. And I'm like, well, my goal is actually to be considerate. That's why I have the view.
Yeah. I think from that standpoint, we're dealing with very extremes. So I would classify myself as a tomboy growing up. I remember my father giving me a Hot Wheels race set when I was 5 and spending hours playing with that. We lived at a cottage. I remember, being in the water, catching bullfrogs and tadpoles and
Nice.
Going fishing with my dad and all those things. I think there's a line, though. Like, there's, you can be a girl and still be extremely athletic. That doesn't mean you want to be a boy.
Yeah.
And you can be a boy and enjoy art and music and fashion. That doesn't mean you want to necessarily be a girl. I think we have always had such strict
Borders.
Yeah, like very divided. A boy is born, what do we do? Everything's blue. A girl is born, what do we do? Everything's pink. Girls play with dolls, boys play with trucks. I think girls would be far more understanding and compassionate towards boys if there wasn't such a crazy divide. You have to put your girls in skirts and uncomfortable clothes something. And for boys, I think they would make far better fathers and brothers and husbands if they were allowed to play with dolls and to be nurturing and to be, to have more of those feminine experiences, and for the girls to have more of the boys' experiences. We create this divide that is so, in my opinion, crazy and unhealthy. If we think, a guy decides to put a skirt on, that's like, well, look at the Scottish. They were wearing kilts for forever. When did the decision get made that men had to wear pants? Because the Scottish were wearing kilts from first day. Romans used to wear the dresses. Pants didn't exist back then. At what point in history did we start making such strong divides? Because I think when we started doing that is when we started causing a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes. I would prefer my daughter, if I'm going to give my daughter books and stories and movies, I want her to see a female who's not the damsel in distress, who the prince has to come along and rescue, because I want her to be in life a human being that's going to know how to be independent, who can care for herself, who can earn money and isn't going to require a man to come along to save her. I don't think that is a healthy dynamic.
Would you think that there's some space for that? Like, I'm assuming if like Canada got attacked, you would want the males to step up first to go to war and protect the country and to protect the women and children. Like, even like when the Titanic sank, like the men, they said to the women, you guys get in the lifeboats first and with the kids and stuff like that, because, to protect, like, don't you think that there's a good thing to that as well though? Like,
To a degree. So if a female, like the one who is always the very good athlete, and she's strong and she has the ability to do those things and wants to do them, she should have the choice to do them. Children need caregivers. And there is something in the dynamic of being a woman that we tend to be the nurturers, but we've also been brought up to be that. And so I do believe if you are a mother and have children, your first responsibility is to the safety of those children. But that doesn't mean that the husband can't be the one taking care of them. That's a decision between her and her husband. So if the husband is going to be more qualified to keep her child safe, I would say, then let it be him. And you take up whatever to support the fight. Right now, my daughter is 33. I know she's a full-grown woman capable of looking after herself. And to keep her safe, I would be picking up the arms and helping at the front lines. But I also think the people at the front lines should be the elderly. They've lived their lives. So
to be the front lines of like a war?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm 50, 60, I've lived a life.
Yeah.
And I should make sure that the younger generation should be able to live theirs too.
Yeah.
When I think of
But a 56,
Vietnam,
yeah.
that there were 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I'm sorry. They were recruiting children to fight. They haven't had a life yet. Let them have a life. Let them experience love.
Yeah.
Let them have children. I mean, it should have been the 40 and 50-year-olds that were going off to do that.
Yeah.
So,
But they're physically just not as capable, though, like at that age to
I would disagree. I mean, if you have an ailment and you can't be there, you've got a disability, but
just like in professional sports, like you have, like, in your 20s you're the strongest, and by the mid 30s you're retiring because your body can't handle it anymore, and keep going. Like if you're 50 or 60 and you're an able-bodied male, like your body's always hurting. I'm in my 30s now, and I'm realizing my body hurts way more now than it does in my 20s.
Try 60. It's like, ouch.
Yeah. So if you're running into a building and you need to save some people, I'd rather have a 25-year-old save me than a 55-year-old, because he probably his knees will give out when he's halfway down the stairs. I understand, of course, that it's not ideal for a 25-year-old in a case. War is never ideal. War is terrible. I hate war.
Yeah.
But that our bodies are just doing certain things at certain stages.
Absolutely. No, and I understand that, but I don't think war is going to be fought in the way that it was in the previous years.
Well, that's definitely true with technology and everything. But.
So I think that's changing. So, in the years where we didn't have the technology that we had, I could understand, if a man had, was in their 20s and 30s and felt a need to go, then I would admire him for his choice. But I think that we would have done better by having men in their 30s and 40s than having children fight for us. And I do consider a kid at 17, 18.
A kid. Yeah.
A kid.
Yeah. Anyways, we've been talking for a couple hours now. I appreciate your willingness to just have the conversation about, these Christian ethics topics, but everything else you shared as well. I learned a lot. It was very enjoyable for me, so I appreciate it. I love what Big Brothers Big Sisters does as an organization and helps kids and gives the mentors that they need. There's a massive need for that. So I definitely encourage anybody listening to give some time and sacrifice a little bit and sign up for an organization like this or do something else. Like there's just massive need for that. So any closing thoughts from you? Anything you want to share?
Well, no, I just want to say thank you for having me on, and thank you for having this dialogue. I think more of this needs to happen in our communities and in life.
Yes.
Because we are at a crossroads right now where, things are becoming very divisive and combative, and more conversation needs to be had. We need to listen more than we talk.
Yeah.
And show more compassion and love, as you said. So
especially with people we disagree with. I see that more and more. It's one of the reasons I started this podcast was because I was like, I've seen people on different sides of an issue hurling insults at each other and not taking any time to understand how that person got to that belief. So like if someone has pink hair, for example, they didn't just decide randomly one day to get pink hair. There was a series of events that happened in their life that made them decide to want to do that. And if you take that time to understand that, then you can actually have compassion and understanding for the person. Doesn't mean that you necessarily agree. I'm picking on a random thing here, but you need to have dialogue. And there's just very, very, very little dialogue happening, partially because of social media and different reasons. So I definitely agree. So thanks again. If someone does want to sign up, they can just Google Big Brothers Big Sisters, right? And
yes, go to our website, Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Fraser Valley. That's all you have to type in, and you'll come to our website. There's a way to apply our applications on there if you want to give time. We have a lot of volunteer opportunities in office as well.
Okay. Can they donate money as well on the website?
Always.
Always. Okay. Yeah.
Always. It's needed for what we do, absolutely. The past couple of years have been tough with all that's happening in community and society. But yeah, anybody who has an hour to give a week that can help us in a volunteer capacity. If you don't have the ability to be able to mentor, certainly if you have a skill set administratively or a skill set in business, we always have a spot on a subcommittee or on our board of directors. Just contact us. We will find a spot for
Okay.
you.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for listening, guys. I will catch you on the next one. Hey guys, if you enjoyed that episode and were blessed by it, would you be willing to support the show? That would help a lot in creating more content, improving the quality of the content, putting the production value, getting more guests on, and me being able to spend more time and energy towards it. So if you're interested in doing that, you can click up here and it'll take you to a support page. But you can also subscribe to the podcast by clicking over here and doing that. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.